Okay, so so we go back to the share screen and okay, so so your philosophical assumptions, that means you have to have a theoretical framework and you choose the one you like. Like I told you, when you go to graduate school and you want to become your PhD and become a college professor, you're going to pick from your college, from your 7 years of studying as an undergraduate and then as a graduate student, your theoretical framework, including your interpretive lens, and then the procedures for undertaking that research. So qualitative research is evolving over time, and it involves closer attention to the interpretive nature of the inquiry. Your interpretive lens is your theoretical framework. Philosophical assumptions, that's more of a broader notion about your view about the nature of reality. If genders are there's gender oppression or racial oppression, then this is more specific in terms of a theoretical framework, because when you do research, like I tell you, when you write your paragraphs and your papers, you have to use and cite specific information from scholarly peer-reviewed sources to support your research. So you have to show how your ideas relate to what has already been published in scholarly peer-reviewed sources. So that means you have to choose the theoretical literature that's been published in social science to be your partners in dialoguing with, to interpret what you're finding and to create your study, actually to construct your study. So that means you have to be explicit about your the interpretive framework that you're using, and that means using and citing scholarly sources. Where does your research fit? What weakness or absence or lack are you trying to fill through your research? It focuses on closer attention on situating the study within the political, social, and cultural context of the researchers. So why are you as a researcher interested in this topic? Are you concerned about the rise of Donald Trump? Are you concerned about the reaction against gender identity and gender rights? You have to be reflexive or self-aware of the researchers in describing who you are. So that was being mocked in that hoax that we covered last class. So according to table 3.1, there are several common characteristics of qualitative research. It's done in a natural setting. So you're going to interview your college students, interviewees at the residence hall or at the restaurant, at the Shikdang, at the Hof, wherever, at the college classroom. You gather the data in the field at the site where participants experience the issue or problem under study is typical for qualitative researchers. So yeah, interviewing, like if somebody decides to interview Kritika here as a Cambodian student coming from Belgium, somebody want to interview you as part of this research study in the residence halls, because that's where you spend most of your time, right? Like I said, you can interview each other as well as other international students outside of Catholic University of Korea. Just make sure it's an international student. In qualitative research, you do not bring individuals into a laboratory, in other words, which is a contrived situation. In qualitative research, you do not send out survey questionnaires or other instruments for individuals to complete, but you still have to prepare your questions. They talk to people directly, seeing them and act and behave within their context. And researchers have face-to-face interaction over time with their interviewees. That's, again, I keep thinking about this research project that I had planned to do with members of my church at the church where we would meet for coffee, and then the pandemic hit. And these people don't want to talk to me over Zoom. They certainly don't want to be recorded. So this goes to show you're not really supposed to do this. Well, if you can get away with it over Zoom, great. But researcher is a key instrument. The qualitative researcher himself or herself gathers the data. They do it through examining documents. They observe behaviors and they interview participants. The qualitative researcher may use an instrument like a set of interview questions, but the researcher uses open-ended questions. So you want to get people to talk. So you want to encourage them to talk without appearing to guide them to talk in the way you want them to talk. You remember those focus group interviews with Soltis that New York Times highlighted? Notice her questions were very broad, very general at the beginning. She did not want to in any way push the interviewees, these 10 conservative or 8 conservative white men, or not, they weren't white, they were conservative American men. She only began specifying the questions when they themselves raised the particular issue that was being specified, like what it means to be a man. She didn't start out with saying, so tell me, what does it mean to be a man? She didn't do that at the beginning. She only did that when they brought it up. She didn't bring it up. And so that gives you an indication that what it means to be a man in America for a lot of American men is they feel insecure, that somehow if you're a traditional man who has a wife that defers to you, that follows your lead, that somehow you're a troglodyte. I'm being funny, right? You're somehow backward. You're not modern. You're not modern. You're a problem, in fact. You're a traditional white, straight man, and you're the source of all the evils in the world. You gave us oppression of women. You gave us bullying of gay people. And you gave us in the past dislike of people that are not white men, including Black people. And I know this because I don't want to talk about my family, but anyway, so it's they tend not to use or rely on questionnaires or instruments that are developed by other researchers. So you develop your own questions. They engage in multiple methods. Qualitative researchers typically do not rely on a single source of data, but rather gather multiple forms of data, such as interviews, observations, and documents. This is called triangulation, right? You gather information from different sources, and you use the different information from different sources to come to some conclusions, but you still need a theoretical framework. And, we've been studying the Trompenaars Hampton Turner framework because that's really popular and that's really useful and that's really common in the business world. So, and I know a lot of you have hopes of, getting a job in the business world. So they tend to review all of the data and make sense of it. The qualitative researcher then organizes the data into categories or themes. And these themes or categories cut across all the data sources. So again, if you use software like NVivo, this can be really useful if you have lots of interview words, lots of text that you copied and recorded and copied and transcribed into words on paper or digital paper. Then you can use these software packages to help you organize the words and define themes. Even like just counting the number of times certain words are used can be useful. But again, copying, recording interviews can be a challenge. It involves complex reasoning through inductive and deductive logic. By analyzing data from the bottom up, qualitative researchers build their patterns, categories, and themes. The data is then organized inductively into increasingly more abstract units of information. Again, all of this requires that you have a theoretical framework, whether it be Marxist or realist or feminist or whatever. This inductive process involves researchers working back and forth between the themes and the database until they establish a comprehensive set of themes that encompasses all of the data. So all of the data has to be organized, and it requires inferring patterns out of the open-ended question responses. Researchers also have to engage in deductive thinking. This is the application of a theory. So you deduct the implications of your data by using a theoretical framework that you bring to interpret it. And then they build themes that are constantly being checked against the data. The data, again, they're not numbers. The data are the qualitative information that you've been gathering. Complex reasoning skills are therefore used throughout the process of research in the form of this inductive, deductive logic process. the emphasis here on the participants' meanings. Like, how do these 8 conservative men, each of them, understand their world that they live in, that they confront every day? The qualitative researcher continually focuses on the meaning that the participants have or hold regarding a problem or issue. The focus is not on meaning that the researchers bring into the research or the meaning that writers in the literature bring. The participants' meaning suggests further perspectives and diverse views on a topic. The multiple perspectives of the participants in the study should be reflected in a theme developed and presented in the study. So, yeah, sure. I mean, the qualitative data should help you develop your own theoretical ideas. You know, it should also help you develop your theoretical framework. So it's not just a matter of, I'm the bright, brilliant researcher interviewing these 8 conservative men, and I'm going to make them fit into my framework. If my framework is not adequate or can be developed further from working with these 8 conservative men or whomever you're interviewing, your 2 interviewees, you should do that. And in fact, you are supposed to, as it's highlighted in the book, before you publish or submit your final research project, you're supposed to let your interviewees look at it and correct it if they don't like, so they can see what you're going to produce out of your research with them. You want their feedback. So you're not judging these people. Or at least you don't want to come across as saying, well, you're backward and inferior. It is context dependent. The context or setting within which the researcher is studying the problem should be reported by the researcher. So, you know, we were talking about that, you know, in terms of the context this time. I mean, we got to talk about the pandemic. What's been the impact of the pandemic? That is a once in 100-year event. And it's really impacted the university. I mean, but it's impacted everybody. I mean, CUK is a very different place than what it was 10 years ago. In order to understand the context influence upon the participants' experiences, the researcher must seek an understanding of these political, historical, and social contextual features. Understanding that the unique circumstances within which actions, events, and meaning occur means understanding the context. So the research process is an emergent process. Let me see how much farther I got to go here. Let's finish this up and then we'll do an exercise. The initial plan for research cannot be rigidly prescribed. After the researcher enters the field and begins to collect data, all phases in the process may shift or change. For example, the question may change, the questions may change. The researcher may decide he or she needs to alter the forms of data collection. The researcher may decide to change the participants or individuals he or she needs to study. The sites visited may need to be modified. I'm confronting this right now since I can't get anybody to interview at Somog Church. I'm scrambling to change my project. The key idea: to do whatever you need to do in order to obtain the information from the participants to learn about the problem or issue. Reflexivity: researchers position themselves in a qualitative research. So the researcher includes in the study their background, how it informs their interpretation of the information, and what they have to gain from the study. For example, their work experiences, cultural experiences, history. This should be their work experiences, their. Cultural experiences, history, in a method section, in an introduction, or in the other places of study. And it is a holistic account. So, so you have to be clear here about explaining who you are and why you're doing this study. Holistic account: qualitative researchers try to develop a complex picture of the problem or issue that they are studying. It involves multiple perspectives, identifying the main factors in a situation. The focus is on identifying the complex interactions of factors in any situation. Okay, so here's an example. This struck me as interesting. And, the New York Times has a Tokyo bureau and now a South Korea Seoul bureau is their two main bureaus in East Asia. So this is an article that appeared just a couple of days ago in the New York Times about, and this is the kind of qualitative research topic, that qualitative researchers would do. It's an article about the Japanese young people increasingly getting tattoos. Tattoos. And the article, it's a long article, so I'm not going to go through it all here, but it's interesting. And well, maybe I can go through most of it here. It says here, Ayaka Kizu, a web designer in Tokyo, stood by her office desk one recent day, peeling Band-Aids off an apple-sized portion of her right arm. A meeting with clients had ended, so she was now free to reveal what lay underneath: a tattoo of a multicolored unicorn. Kizu, 28, is one of a growing number of young people who are bucking Japan's longstanding taboos against tattoos, which remain identified with organized crime, even as the Japanese mob has faded and body art has become widely popular in the West. Inspired by Japanese influencers and foreign celebrities, Kizu decided at 19 to get a tattoo of a crescent moon on her right thigh, and homage to her favorite manga series, Sugar Sugar Rune. She has since gotten 5 more. As she has cycled through jobs since college, including public relations at a big traditional firm and sales work in a department store, she has had to get creative to conceal her tattoos, whose display remains essentially forbidden in all but the most liberal of workplaces. That means, for instance, that she must leave her hair down to cover the ink behind her ears. It's a pain, but as long as I hide them when doing business, I don't mind, she said. I wanted to be fashionable. I just decided to go for it. With each scroll of their phones, young Japanese have become more exposed to tattoos worn by famous singers and models, chipping away at the stigma against body art and emboldening them to challenge entrenched social expectations about their appearance. So I don't know if any of you have been to the US, but tattoos are everywhere. And I've always wondered why. And there's still a negative connotation with tattoos in the United States. That somebody who's getting tattoos, they're somehow rejecting traditional expectations of appropriate appearance and expectations of how they should behave. And I've always wondered about this. And this might be a topic to investigate in terms of, you could use social identity theory, right? That I don't want to be like my mom and dad and evaluate myself only in this way. But at the same time, my mom and dad, they work so hard in Korea or Japan, always working. I don't want to always work. And I don't want to feel bad about not focusing my life on my job. And so you make some kind of, this would be a research hypothesis, right? That research hypothesis 1, body tattoos reveal a dissent from traditional work expectations, traditional life expectations, something along those lines. And to test that hypothesis, you need to come up with qualitative data. Go interview these people and find out about their tattoos. And this is the context. There's a context here. Why are these tattoos significant? It goes on to describe how around 1.4 million Japanese adults have tattoos, almost double the number from 2014, according to Yoshimi Yamamoto, a cultural anthropologist at Tsuru University who studies traditional Haijichi tattoos worn on the hands of Okinawan women. So Okinawa is another special case. Like Okinawa was added to the Japanese state in the 19th century, right? There's something about Okinawa that's going on here, right? In 2020, tattooing took a huge leap towards broader acceptance when Japan's Supreme Court ruled that it could be performed by people other than licensed medical professionals. There are tattoo shops all over the US, right? 60% of people in their 20s and younger believe that general rules regarding tattoos should be relaxed, according to a survey conducted last year by an information technology company. In big cities like Tokyo and Osaka, visible tattoos are becoming more commonplace among food service workers, retail employees, and those in the fashion industry. Well, food service workers, these are not considered high prestige jobs. You don't make a lot of money. we joke about them in the US. If you're not very smart, you don't go to college, you go work at McDonald's, or you go work in the sales department at a store. Is class? When you say class, Marxism, Marxist theoretical frameworks are important, right? Or could be useful. In the back, but then there's the fashion industry, dissent, right? Fashion industry is about acting in ways that look like you're kind of rebellious. In the back alleys of Shinjuku, a buzzing Tokyo neighborhood, Takafumi Seto, 34, wears a t-shirt that shows off his red and black inked sleeve while he works as a barista at a trendy cafe. Seto got most of his tattoos after moving to Tokyo 10 years ago from the suburbs of Western Japan, where he still gets stares when he visits his family. His grandmother doesn't know about his tattoos, so he sees her only in the winter when he can wear long sleeves. And it goes on here. I think that the hurdle of getting a tattoo has gone down, he said. On Instagram, people show off their ink. Tattoos are okay now. It's kind of generation. Hiroki Kakahashi, 44, tattoo artist who has won a cult following among women in their 20s for his coin-sized fine line tattoos, said his clients now came from a broader range of professions: government workers, high school teachers, and nurses. They're often in places that can be hidden, but more people have tattoos than you wouldn't imagine, he said. Tattoos have a long history in Japan, and they were important to women in indigenous Okinawan and Ainu communities. Their association with organized crime goes back about 400 years. They were used to brand criminals on their arms or foreheads with marks that varied by region and crime. For instance, a circle, a large X, or the Japanese character for dog. After Japan ended more than 2 centuries of isolation in 1868, the country started promoting Western-style modernization policies, among them a law banning tattoos, which were seen as barbaric. Although that ban was lifted in 1948, the stigma remained. Yakuza, or Japanese gangsters, often have neck-to-ankle wabori, or a traditional Japanese-style tattoo done by hand using needles. Because of this gangster association, many hot springs, resorts, beaches, and gyms bar people with tattoos. Office jobs that allow tattoos are still sparse to non-existent, with many companies expressly prohibiting applicants who have them. Don't show up if you have a tattoo. You're not going to get hired. And so I maybe won't go through it all here. So, you know, in these, I think wabori, I mean, they're on Wikipedia too. If I, maybe I go back to the Wikipedia site. Does it come up with wabori? Does it come up here? Maybe it doesn't. How about wabori? Oh, here are these wabori images. So this is associated with organized crime people in Japan to have these kinds of tattoos. And of course, the Korean minority in Japan, which is a discriminated, marginalized group, they're disproportionately represented, I understand, from what I heard in the Yakuza in Japan. So, like, I don't know how popular tattoos are in Korea, but if they're but of course, let's go back to this this exercise here. So that's the wrong one, I think. Yeah, so let's go back. Where's the other one? Okay, here it is. So make sure you can see it. So what I would like you to do now is to that's not it, sorry. What I'd like you to do now is come up with a list of interview questions that you would ask. A preliminary list. What kind of interview questions or survey instrument would you create to interview Japanese students and young professionals as to why they have gotten tattoos? So let's divide up into 2 groups. And I think you can see that. Let me see here. Go here. We go to breakout rooms. And how many people? 5 people. So we'll go into 2 groups. So please join the group. Gloria and Iju Young and Kratiku Keu and Kwandeok, please join room 2. And we will have, please work together in your group to come up with 4 questions, starting questions or preliminary questions that you could use to begin to interview Japanese young people who have gotten tattoos. And of course, explain why you came up with those questions. Explain why you came up with those questions. And what's the theoretical framework that you might use to try to explain why you came up with those questions. And of course, this is the first time. This is a first draft, right? So, okay, I'm going to go interview Japanese young people and as to why they've gotten these tattoos, given we know the stigma, we know their association traditionally with among older people with gangsters, that why are they doing this? Why are they getting these tattoos? And particularly when they hide them, they don't show them to anybody because can get in trouble. To whom do they show them? Their boyfriend, girlfriend, their close friends? Like, what is the significance of this growing the growing tendency for tattoos in Japan, giving this traditional association with gangsters? It was illegal until 1948 to have tattoos. What's going on here? These are exactly the kind of qualitative research questions that would be done. This would be a topic for a qualitative research project to produce data that hopefully could become an article for a journal to be published. And I've always wondered about it. I mean, I've seen that also in American commentary in the media, that people who get tattoos somehow don't want to be held to expectations that are stressful. It's not just tattoos, you know. So those 2 groups. So let's have, I'm going to write down a number because I forgot to bring a coin with me. So Deok, pick a number between 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 3, the third person or the bottom person, each group will speak. So the bottom person is Moon Soon Young, and Kwan Tae-hok will speak. So help Moon Soon Young and Kwan Tae-hok explain the 4 questions each group came up with, starting questions that you would start to interview your 6 to 12 Japanese young people regarding their tattoos. And I will come up with a list of questions too. So they're introductory questions, right? So you can't say, you know, are you sympathetic? Do you admire Yakuza? You're not going to come up, and that's not going to be your first question, right? Your first question is, well, I won't tell you. I'll just write down my questions. Okay, I got my 4 questions. Okay, I got to shut this down and record the class, so I have to move to my laptop.